Today's video is brought to you by Audible. Get yourself a free audiobook download that you can keep forever, as well as a free 30-day trial when you sign up using the promo code www.audibletrial.com/projectacheron426. Audible has a collection of over 180,000 titles, including many Alien and Predator titles to choose from. The historical and innovative Sir Peter Weyland was an extremely successful entrepreneur and inventor who was, in every sense of the word, the maverick of the 21st century. He was the founder and CEO of the Weyland Corporation that rised to global and intergalactic dominance by the end of the 21st century and leading into the 22nd. Eventually, Weyland, as he aged, became to see himself with a god complex, which is pretty understandable considering his achievements. This drive led him down a path to seek immortality. Funny enough though, that's actually what brought about his mortality. Peter Weyland was a man of great determination, something that was only rivaled by his relentlessness. This led him to be a very successful role in his company's CEO, and he effectively led it for decades, inventing and innovating in just about all areas of science, mathematics, technology, and engineering. However, one fact that Weyland struggled to console was that he was still only just a man. After his monumental achievements through life, not one of his creations could save him from death. It was this biological struggle with nature that led him to eventually risk his entire company's reputation, all of their funds, and the lives of an entire crew, his life and the life of his daughter, just for a chance to live forever. Basically, by the end of his life, his ambition had grown to finding a way to become immortal. Weyland's parents were obviously of an upper class background, and this birth advantage, as well as a childhood filled with the wild mythological stories of ancient god figures, such as the story of the Olympians and Prometheus, all came to resonate strongly with Weyland's worldview and his goals into the future. Sir Peter Weyland was born in Mumbai, India on the 1st of October 1990 to his mother, an Oxford-educated professor of comparative mythology, and his father, a self-taught engineer. At the age of 14, he was granted a method patent for the synthetic trachea constructed entirely of synthetically engineered stem cells, becoming his 12th registered patent to date. And even at the age of 14, he displayed the makings of a great individual, and eventfully, on the day of the 11th of October 2012, Peter Weyland founded the Weyland Corporation. By the following year, Weyland was worth $1 billion thanks to a renewable energy scheme which saw orbital self-adjusting solar panels be produced and deployed. The operation led to 3 major venture capital firms funding further efforts for this rapidly growing empire Weyland had begun to create. From then until 2017, Weyland led the efforts to abolish global warming through generating a localized synthetic atmosphere above the polar ice caps, using a precursor to the atmospheric processor of his own invention. And just 3 months later, at the age of 26, Sir Peter Weyland became the youngest person ever to achieve knighthood and a Nobel Prize for the synthetic atmosphere work at the polar ice caps. Shortly after this, Weyland took notice of a project under the control of NASA titled Project Prometheus. He took interest in its mission goal to achieve and uncover the origins of life on Earth, and that they were possibly from a cosmic origin. And so he purchased the copyrights to the tech and title from NASA. With Weyland's interest focused on this project, a massive discovery is made on the 19th of December 2017, one that proved the existence of simple life in Europa's oceans. During his tech talk on the 28th of February 2023, he clarified his vision for the future of the Weyland Corporation, laying the groundwork for the next 50 years of building better worlds. In January 2024, Weyland manufactured the first advanced android prototype model of its kind. He affectionately called it David, a name that Weyland had initially reserved for his own first human-born son. At some point, the Japanese startup, Yutani Corporation, filed a lawsuit and attempted to sue Weyland for the patent of the android. However, Weyland came out on top after a year of litigation in 2029. During 2026, Weyland acquired a whole bunch of other companies, one in specific being Genetech, significantly bolstering the company's biotech holdings, and privatised NASA's famous Kepler mission, increasing its funding tenfold, and within a year discovering 6,546 biocompatible planets in the middle heavens region of space. 3 years down the track, in the year 2032, Weyland acquired a large collection of other massive aerospace companies, which included Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Bay Systems, and Lockheed Martin, significantly bolstering its multinational defense, security, and aerospace technology holdings. During the time between 2023 and 2025, Sir Peter Weyland helps to do the impossible with the health division of Weyland Industries, when they're able to find a cure for almost all types of common cancer, 98% of them in fact. This achievement was made possible due to the new elements discovered from an extraterrestrial origin. The Nobel Peace Prize in Medicine was awarded to Weyland, his ego extended by this monument, and the world-changing achievement he had just done. Weyland soon in the same year earns patent number 8,128,899 for the method and apparatus of synthetic individuals for use in scientific and industrial environments. Further advancement over the next 2 years involved improving its rifling technology, as well as developing a holographic environmental simulator. January the 7th, 2025 was a very special date for Weyland, as they finally began to manufacture the first model of an advanced android type, being the first of its kind. Further years saw Weyland make further advancements to weapons and genetic technology as he went around the world absorbing smaller companies as well as taking over many space missions. Soon after, at the 2030s, Weyland began developing the beginnings for body stasis and finally the hypersleep chamber. He created atmospheric processing technology and eventually acquired CERN, taking control of the nuclear research centres of the Large Hadron Collider and other sister facilities. He also saw his company colonise Luna, or the Moon, and establish multiple settlements there, such as the Tranquility Lunar Base. Soon after, a beautiful bit of progress occurred in space travel, when the first FTL engine technology is developed and finally allows humanity to move beyond our home solar system, with practical applications numbering unlimited. Only a year later, the first deep space FTL capable craft is created and named Helidades by Weyland himself. After a lift on restrictions on androids put in place by the National Science Foundation, the commercial use of androids quickly occurs, including the new David III model. By the end of the decade, the outer veil region of space in the middle heavens is discovered and seen as a potential hotspot for further resources to fuel humanity's growth into the stars. Weyland makes this region of space a priority for exploration, and as the decade ends, the planet GJ667cc is the first to effectively be terraformed by Weyland atmospheric processing technology, allowing humans to breathe there on the surface in a previously uninhabitable world, making a first for Weyland and a massive leap for mankind as a whole. Now, not only could we discover and colonize other worlds, but we could also terraform them and transform them to fit our own needs. Mars was quickly terraformed after GJ, and the moons of LV-426 and LV-223 are both possible candidates for life-faring worlds, and Weyland can't help but take interest in the Zeta 2 reticuli system for some reason. Weyland continued to support the future of humanity and attempted to make improvements to societal quality through the creation of off-world correctional facilities and providing massive amounts of funding to charity organisations. Over the years, Weyland ensures to prioritise the David model from the other android models and eventually creates models 4 to 7. Notable technologies developed between the 50s and 70s include the RT-01 group transports and the NR6 ATVs. The exoskeleton known as the Power Loader was developed for industry and military advantage. The first and the successors of the 7201 MedPod and the Spectrograph 3D anti-grav mapping technology are all developed. In the year 2057, Sir Peter Weyland would become an official father when he had a child with a currently unknown spouse. Their daughter was named Meredith Vickers, born in Britain in the UK, whilst Weyland was still living there. Her childhood and early life was much less desirable, with her suffering great disdain from her father, and as the viewer, we really don't know what happened to her mother, whether she left, whether she died, or simply stood back and allowed her daughter to be ridiculed at the hands of Weyland. During her teenage and early life, she studied business and management at Oxford and greatly excelled in her field, eventually graduating and gaining a high board position in her father's company, which most likely would have been hard to achieve due to her father's demeanour. The android model known as David stood as someone for Meredith Vickers to direct all her hatred at, as her father considered this specific android as his son, whilst almost disowning his own blood relative daughter. This forged his daughter into a very cynical, straight to the point, and unempathetic individual. A lot of these specific qualities about her personality were directly driven by the treatment and expectations placed upon her by her father. She was treated harshly by him, and Peter Weyland always wanted a son, and did try time and time again to have a child, only for that child to be a girl who could not carry on his legacy's name, caused him great disarray. From the time she was born, Weyland basically disowned her and ridiculed her, never gave her any praise, and always made her feel inferior. Eventually even somewhat replacing her with the David 8 model synthetic, which Weyland actively considered his son and only really ever acknowledged him from that point forward as his child. This all may be the reason that Meredith took the last name Vickers instead of Weyland, as basically a fuck you to Weyland and his egotistical ways. While it is possible that she was married at some point, I find it unlikely due to her less than cooperative stance on human-to-human interaction. In honour of the great Sir Peter Weyland, on the 23rd of June 2065, a memorial library is built in Washington DC. A very special event for Weyland, considering that it is a memorial building, and these things are only supposed to be produced after the time of death for the particular individual, further inflating the aging man's ego. Soon after, Weyland begins to recognise the need to expand their colonisation efforts to security, as they are approached by the US government to begin work on the foundation of a first-of-its-kind colonial peacekeeping force, which would eventually come to be known as Weyland Commandos, and then the Colonial Marines, with the Colonial Marines who would have heavily partnered with Weyland Industries from this point forward, also allowing for the United Americas to share in a little piece of that pie that was Weyland's control over space. At the dawn of the 2070s, Weyland Industries becomes the Olympic World partner, and another major innovation to come from the company is Weyland's patent on a synapse re-establisher, which can temporarily restart the brain of a deceased individual. We see this used in Prometheus when Shaw tries to reanimate the dead engineer's head. Weyland makes this technology a staple for future progress as he endeavours to have this developed and have it almost be like the starting point for his immortality research. His aging body, though, begun to frighten the human titan, as despite his extraordinarily exciting and eventful life, he rejected the idea of death and being robbed of his grasp over this world. After such, Weyland Industries, commanded by Weyland, goes through a massive reorganization, consolidating the products, health, transport, energy, electronics, terraforming, security, cybernetics, and colonization industries and sectors of the business, aiming the next big project for the company towards the research for a medical and biological advance to achieve immortality. Whilst not made entirely public, Weyland certainly had something like this heavily in mind. After decades of waiting and searching and researching and theorizing and working hard to find answers to a massive question, where to begin with Project Prometheus, in the year 2089, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway, two partnered archaeologists, work together and result in the discovery of the star maps to LV-223, scattered across the ancient civilizations of Earth that were not only unconnected but had no contact with each other, but also did not possess technology to view this star constellation either way. This star map was scattered across the ancient civilizations of Earth that were not only in contact with each other, but did not possess the technology to view this star constellation with the naked eye. Dr. Shaw saw this as an invitation from what she believed was human creators they had dubbed engineers that had visited the planet previously and left it here for us to find. Shaw quickly goes about collating her notes and research and goes to seek funding from the Maverick himself, Sir Peter Weyland. Very quickly after reviewing the Doctor's collective achievements and evidence they presented, Weyland brings them in and puts in a new round of investment into Project Prometheus. The project had been taken from NASA decades ago, and his vision for immortality had reached a point where Weyland could finally achieve a long thought out dream of living forever over a galactic empire built by him. The project eventually garners Weyland's full support and around $1 trillion of investor funding, including a large percentage from Weyland himself, which is collected for the project, and within 2 years, in the year 2091, the project's destination, crew, mission, and equipment is constructed and consolidated. The US CSS Prometheus completes its manufacture process and launches in the year 2091, bound for LV-223, located in the Zeta 2 Reticuli system. The location depicted in the many various ancient artworks found here on Earth. Just prior to the launch of the Prometheus, Weyland records a holographic message from his home on Mars to greet the crew of the Prometheus once they arrive at their destination. After this, he initiates a secret plan, having himself stowed away in the ship in his own private hypersleep chamber, unbeknownst to the rest of the crew, all but his android David and daughter Meredith Vickers. So Peter Weyland would be travelling in secret to LV-223 whilst the rest of the world believed he was dead, taken by old age. He would, in reality, be off on a distant world, conquering it. After the Prometheus arrives in its destination and all the crew begin to explore the moon and its temples, the remnants of the engineer facility as well there, David is sure to maintain checks on Weyland in his hypersleep pod, giving him updates on everything that is occurring in the mission. He does this through communicating with Weyland's unconscious mind, utilising an alpha wave communication device. After being informed by David of the many setbacks of the mission, like many crew's deaths and the hostile creatures being encountered, David finally brings him good news when he reveals that there is a lone surviving engineer within the confines of the temple. Weyland orders it to be reactivated, its life pod reactivated, and David briefs him on the current situation and how they will be proceeding to the temple so that Weyland may communicate with his gods in order to seek their assistance in achieving eternal life. Knowing that if anyone in the universe could achieve this, it would be the creators of humanity. As he recovers from an extended hypersleep, his medical personnel maintain Weyland's vitals and prepare for him to take his journey to the surface. Soon after, though, a disorientated Dr. Shaw stumbled upon his room and collapses, as she had just suffered through a brutal surgery to remove one of these hostile creatures that David had been talking about. Her and Weyland have a brief conversation after she discovers that he is alive, and in fact not dead, as she had been led to believe. Shaw implores Weyland to reconsider his actions, considering how all the evidence that LV-223 had presented suggested that the engineers had turned against humanity and wished to destroy us. Weyland ignored her warnings and ripped at her for possibly losing her faith after the loss of her partner, Charlie Holloway. He explains that after hearing what Shaw and Holloway had to say back on Earth years ago, he became convinced that the engineers could save him from death, something he feared greatly. Unlike other company members depicted in the franchise, Peter does not seem to care or obsess over the Xenomorphs, or the similar life forms seen in Prometheus, as he seems more obsessed with extending his own life, rather than bringing a hostile life form back to Earth for studying. It is not known if he gave the order for Holloway to be infected, or if it was just solely David's choice, but he may have asked David to bring back samples to see if they had what was necessary to extend his life, showing a possible disregard for the health and safety of the crew of the expedition. He had become a very self-centered man, and as the black liquid was secretly brought aboard without going through scans and quarantines, he was performing some pretty illegal stuff. With Shaw's warning chucked out the window, Weyland prepared himself for the pinnacle of his life's long progress. His march forward in science that had led him ultimately to this very point. He was finally going to meet his creators and achieve immortality. And after his daughter Meredith Vickers once more tried to convince her father that his reign was at an end and that he was making a mistake, he simply ignored her and shows her again the cruel, callous, closed fist of disappointment before dismissing her. Taken by David, Ford and Jackson to meet the last engineer, even despite Shaw's protest, Shaw decides to tag along with them. Once they travel to the temple and trek down the area where David discovered a lone slumbering engineer in stasis, they quickly go about awakening him. The colossal being arises and stands feet above everyone else in the room, gazing out, observing his new strange surroundings. And after Peter Weyland attempts to communicate with the engineer using David as a translator, Shaw quickly interrupts and attempts to question the engineer about why they wish to now destroy humanity after first creating us. But she is quickly silenced by one of the security officers by order of Weyland, who was tired of the growing annoyance, which was Dr. Shaw. Weyland then demands David to translate a message to the engineer from himself, explaining why he believed he deserved immortality. Basically, Weyland saw himself now elevated to the position of a god due to his many achievements and endeavours through his lifetime. And fitting as a god, he felt and openly stated that a god should never die, comparing himself to the engineers themselves. The engineer for a moment looks on. He looks at Weyland and then looks at David. The pinnacle of Weyland's creative success. Humans had created their own form of life. For a moment, the colossal titan seemed to be proud. However, quickly that turned sinister, as the engineer became fed up with this situation and decapitated David's head, using the head to fracture Weyland's skull, effectively killing him. The engineer then proceeded to go on and kill the other crew members, and Shaw picked herself up from her knees and began to bolt out of the temple. As Weyland lay there on the ground, in the middle of the chaos, he was able to muster some last words. Speaking to David, he states, "There's nothing." David simply replies with, "I know. Have a safe journey, Mr. Weyland." Before I go, I just wanted to let you guys know about the merch store called ACHERON's Colonial Marketplace. Here you can pick up a variety of ACHERON and alien themed merch from 3 distinct product lines, including shirts, hoodies, mugs, blankets, stickers, bags, and even phone cases. So if you want to support the channel and look good doing it, pick up some ACHERON merch. But what other videos would you guys like to see? If you have any ideas or have any questions you would like answered, please meet me down in the comments. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and go check out Project ACHERON on Twitter and Discord. If you want to support me further, you can become a patron where you can get access to early and behind the scenes content, the monthly and Alien Day giveaways, as well as the patron only engraved set of items. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Until then, this is Project ACHERON, signing off.